Hi there, this is Helen James from the Pacifica Historical Society, and tonight I'm the host of the show, Footprints of Pacifica. We get together every week to discover and explore the lure and the lore of lovely Pacifica, its character and its characters. Now, the focus of today's show is May G, a woman who has led a very interesting life before she came to Pacifica, and then after coming here, has continued to lead a busy and productive life, and one of service and commitment to the city. Welcome to the show, May. We've known each other since 1955.
That's right.
We are really pleased to have this chance to let the people of Pacifica know about you. Can you tell us a little bit about your very early background?
I was born in Chico in 1924. My father was in the restaurant business. That's why he ended up in Chico, because they had a factory there, the Diamond Match Company. And so he used to feed all the workers there with his menu. And there was only 5 Chinese families in Chico at that time, and about 8,000 people when we moved there. I didn't know about that till after I grew up, because I was young and I didn't pay attention to any of the statistics of the city.
Tell me a little bit about your parents' background.
Well, my parents were both born in China, in Canton, in the village. And my father, he worked as on the ship, and he was a chef on the ship. And then when they came to Honolulu, he stayed. He didn't go back to China. And then from Honolulu, he came over to the United States. And so he started the restaurant business. And he was a friend of my grandfather's. When my mother came over, my grandfather's daughter, that is, he was the matchmaker, so my father married my mother, and they had 5 children. I'm the oldest of them.
Now, how did you happen to come to San Francisco?
Well, my father was awfully sick. He had a heart condition, and Stanford Hospital was the only one that did open heart surgery. So he came down, the doctor says they might be able to save you. And he had open heart surgery, but he didn't survive.
And what did you do then?
Well, after my father passed away, then my mother's parents lived in San Francisco, so she wanted to be close to her family because she was an immigrant, and she was only here a couple of years, and she didn't speak the language. So she came to San Francisco, and we lived in Chinatown, and I grew up there. I went to school at the Commodore Stockton School and the grammar school, and then I went to Francisco Junior High, and I graduated from Commerce High School.
Tell me a little more about, did you have a language problem?
Oh, well, sort of. Because we spoke Chinese at home, because my grandparents didn't speak any English, my mother didn't speak English, but we have to speak English when we go out, because up at Chico, everybody spoke English. There was only 5 Chinese families, so
you were well-rounded.
we speak Chinese at home, and then when we grow up with bilingual, it's easy. I couldn't really learn a new foreign language today, because I guess it's the difference.
Did I understand you had to help the students at Commodore Sloat with English language?
No, I was at the Commodore Stockton School.
Commodore Stockton.
Commodore Stockton. And when I went to school, the teachers were surprised that I spoke English so well, without accent. And so I had to tutor some of the children that came from non-speaking, English-speaking families, and I had to tutor them. And they had such an accent. You don't understand it until you go to school. Today, naturally, everybody spoke English. Even the foreign students, they learn very fast. But in those days, the Chinese, they always pronounced T-H-D-A, da. This is the story. This is the thing, you know. And so I had to tell them that you don't pronounce T-H with a D.
Well, that's very interesting. You said something about moving to Powell Street?
Oh, yes. When we first came out here, we lived in Chinatown, and then my mother found a nice flat. A friend of ours recommended that we move, you know, up to Powell Street, and it's right around the corner from our school, so we don't have to cross any streets. So we moved into the flat, and it was just 2 blocks up from Grant Avenue, but in those days, that was out in the sticks, and so my mother's friends didn't even come visit us because we lived too far away, 2 blocks.
I think that is wonderful to hear, that you lived out in the sticks because you lived on Powell Street. Now, you told about something rather serious. You could see from where you were, I believe, the scrap metal was being sent to Japan, and that, I guess...
Yeah, when I was in high school, I think in 1933, I was in grammar school at that time, and the Japanese start, you know, invading China, and then in the late 30s and early 40s, they were shipping scrap metal to Japan, and that was before Pearl Harbor. It was in the late 30s, I think, and the Chinese were very much against that because they know all that scrap metal is going to become ammunition, and we just can't allow that to happen because my parents were born in the old country, and they figured that we don't want to, you know, scrap metal to go to Japan for ammunition purposes.
Yes, I can understand.
We keep telling all the Americans that someday the Japanese might use that scrap metal to make ammunition and then use it on the United States. And they didn't believe us until Pearl Harbor happened. And when Pearl Harbor happened, then I went to work in the shipyards. That's when I graduated in 1942.
And that's, I understand, you actually were written up in this book, Unbound Voices.
Yeah, Unbound Voices. There was a book, the first book that this woman wrote was Judy Young. She wrote a book, Unbound Feet, because she was making a history of all the Chinese women, you know, living in this country. And they have backgrounds, you know, in the old country. So the girls in China used to have their feet bound because that shows royalty. And so the people born in this country did not have their feet bound, and so they call it Unbound Feet. And she wrote a book, and she came and interviewed me because I was born in this country with, you know, foreign parents. And then when she was through writing the book, she had so much material left over, so she wrote a second book, and I was in both books.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and so she called the second one Unbound Voices because we were outspoken.
Good. Now I understand World War II came, and what did you do then?
Oh, I went to work in the shipyard like everybody else.
And what did you do in the shipyard?
I was a welder. I remember that we had 2 different machines, the Hobart manufactured one, and the Lincoln Company manufactured one, and I liked the Hobart machine, so I always tried to get to work early and get the machine because we have to put our identification on the machine that it's a taken machine, and we could use that machine and attach the hose to the machine and use it all during the shift.
And how did you get to work?
Well, we took the ferry. There was no bridge. The bridge was just open, but we didn't have any cars. So we went down to the ferry building, and they had, the shipyard was over in Richmond. The Kaiser built 3 shipyards, Richmond 1, 2, and 3. So I was working in shipyard number 3 in Richmond, and we were building C-2s, Liberty ships.
Now, I'm going to jump from that and say, I understand you moved on to Michigan. How did that come about?
Oh, well, I met this girl. Her husband was in the Navy, and he was shipped in and out of San Francisco. This was his port of call. And the last time he came in, and his ship came in, well, he got her pregnant. And she didn't want the child to be born in California. She wants to go back to Michigan where her parents were, but her doctor won't let her travel by herself. So I volunteered to go with her as an escort in case there were any problems along the way, I can help her. And she had priority because she was a Navy wife. So we got 2 tickets, but one-way ticket. They wouldn't give us a round-trip ticket, so I couldn't come back. So we took a chance that I will get a ticket to come back to California. But when I got back there, they said I had no connections and I had no priority. I was just a civilian, and so those troops were using all the transportation they can get. So I couldn't come back.
Yeah, I remember that too. You're
Yeah.
telling the truth there.
Yeah. And then I figured the only way I could get back is to join the service because, then I would have some connection. So first I tried to join the Navy, and then I was too short, and I was devastated. Then I figured, well, I didn't want the Army because the uniform wasn't as pretty as the Navy. The Navy uniform was a lot prettier. And so I went to the Army, and they accepted me, but I have to have a letter from my mother, so I have to write home and tell my mother so I wrote a note giving myself permission to join the Army, and then my mother had to sign it, and she mailed it back to me. And so I had to laugh, when they had the reunion back in France, a D-Day reunion. Tom Brokaw wrote a book, and he interviewed Julia Child, and Julia Child tried to get in the Navy, and they wouldn't accept her because she was too tall, and I was too short. So I felt better after that. Well, after I read that book, I felt a lot better.
They were pretty fussy. Well, so you got back to San Francisco. What did you do? What happened? What happened?
Well, I took my basic training in Fort Des Moines, and then I stayed there for a while, and then they shipped me to Camp Roberts because there were an opening in the WAC detachment. They were closing the garrison, the East Garrison, and then the West Garrison was still open. So I was transferred to Camp Roberts, and some of the WACs were transferred to Camp Cook. And so I spent about a year at Camp Roberts, and then they wanted me to go to Shanghai, and I wanted me to re-enlist, for 18 months to go to Shanghai, and I figured 18 months is too long, so I got discharged, and when I came out of the service, I married my husband.
What did you do? Let's see.
I went to school for a while.
What kind of work did you do then?
I went to school for a while under the GI Bill, and in those days, the women were either secretarial work or they would become nurses or teachers. Well, I didn't want to be a teacher and I didn't want to be a nurse, and so I went to school and studied to be a secretary, doing secretarial work. So then I went back and got a job at the Presidio as a civilian. And I worked there for a while, and then I started having a family, so I had to quit and take care of my family. I was a stay-at-home mom for a while.
And how did you meet your husband? I think we skipped
I
over
met
that.
him when I was in the service. When I was stationed at Camp Roberts, I came back to San Francisco on weekends, on passes.
Well, then we have some pictures here. You had 4 children. And who are these?
Oh, that's a picture I was taken with Governor Davis.
Oh, I have the wrong one. Sorry, I apologize.
Oh, yeah, those are my 4 children.
Number 3.
Yeah, My 4 children were Santa Claus. I had 2 sons and 2 daughters. I had a boy and a girl, a boy and a girl. So they say that it's, in the Chinese, they say it's just roses among thorns. The girls are roses and the boys are thorns.
And let's see.
Then after I raised my children started school, then I went back to work at the Presidio.
All right, and then let's see. All right, you went back to work at the Presidio, and then you came to you came down to Pacifica? How did you happen to come to Pacifica?
Well, my brother-in-law at that time, both my husband and my brother-in-law were very avid fishermen. And so my brother-in-law came down and he saw this big sign, they were building Pacific Manor Shopping Center at that time. And there was a 45-foot lot that they wanted to build, and they're looking for tenants. And my brother-in-law says, I cannot use 45 feet, foot store, but I could use 30 feet of that. And so the manager at that down, Earl Seidel, he told my brother-in-law, he says, if you would find another tenant, we will build a building. So he talked my husband into coming down and opening up a business. So my husband, the only thing he knew what to do is to cook. So he says, I could open a little restaurant. So he did. And then we opened a little Chinese food takeout place.
I think we have the menu here.
We call it Takey Home, the original Takey Home. And everybody was telling us that was not politically correct, so we changed it to G's Chinese Food.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Then how was Pacifica in those days? How was it different from now?
They were building schools like mad because Odsted had come down, and built. I think when I first started, they were in about Unit 9 or 10, and they started building in Lindenmar, and all the farmers were selling their land as fast as they could sell it, and we were living in Pacific Manor, in Manor Village. We rented a house, and then we bought a house up on Malagra. Our first house, we bought that in 1956, I think. We came down in 55, we rented, and then we bought the house in 56, and opened the restaurant.
And you had to say, after that restaurant, would you tell us about the different places you opened restaurants, or you were very busy here?
We started in Pacific Manor, then we had a restaurant down in Rockaway Beach. We took over the old crab pot, and from there we went to Half Moon Bay. We were down at Half Moon Bay for a while, and then we got an offer to run the restaurant in the bowling alley. So we came back up and opened that, and then we were in Eureka Square. We were all over the place. And our final place was on Francisco Boulevard, and when my husband got too old to run a restaurant, I told him, I said, we have to do something with this, because we still had a lease to the building, and I said, how about an ice cream store? He said, I know nothing about ice cream. I said, you don't have to cook it. So
good point.
He agreed with me. He said, well, that's simple. He said, he doesn't have to do the heavy work. All we have to do is order the ice cream. So we opened an ice cream store, and I still see a lot of my customers. They're all parents now.
Oh, yeah, and here's one. Okay, we really like that. Now, we need to also tell you. Oh, yes. Oh, I think we have a picture of it. We should show that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a picture of our ice cream store. When we had, I think some festival, I don't know. I used to have a lot of parties there. We had a a sticker club, and then we used to have meetings on Saturday mornings with the sticker club. And then whenever we have any campaigns, political campaigns, I always sponsored a campaign fundraiser at the ice cream store.
Okay. Now, you were active at the beginning of the founding of Pacifica. Would you like to tell a little bit about what you did there?
That's a picture of Marvin. I think you introduced him at, he was interviewed at that time. That's our great-grandson. We share, my daughter, my youngest daughter married his oldest son. And so Marvin and I, we share grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So that's our great-grandson, J.D.
Oh, that's nice.
He's in the first grade now. He started the Montessori school, and he loves school. He just adores school. He takes summer camps. He was the one that graduated from kindergarten at Ortega School, and then he went to University of California because my granddaughter works over there, and he went to summer camp over there. So he graduated from kindergarten and into the university.
Wonderful. Did you work on the founding of Pacifica? Were you in the incorporation committee?
Yes, I was on the incorporated. When we first came down here, we were unincorporated. We didn't have a fire department, we didn't have a city hall, we didn't have a police department, and we had the sheriff patrolling our city. Well, at that time, it was a village. There was Edgemar was one village, and then there was Pacific Manor, and there was Sharp Park, there was Rockaway Beach, and there was Lindemar. We were all scattered in Pedro Point. We were all scattered, and we were not united. And then we heard rumors that San Bruno was going to come down, and Millbrae, back in the truck farm. Mm-hmm. I think it's the San Pedro Park now. I think the city boundary is contiguous to Millbrae, and Millbrae was going to come and take some land, and they wanted, part of the coastline, and so did San Bruno, and we understand South San Francisco wanted to take the north end of town, so we were going to be divided, and we didn't want to do that. So we figured if we incorporated into a city, we will remain self-sufficient.
Oh, good. Now,
there were 39 of us on the committee.
You were very active.
There's only 2 of us left here in town. It's Connie Mason Brown and myself.
Oh.
And the rest of them either moved away or they passed away.
Oh. Now, you were, besides the founding of Pacifica, you were on a lot of other commissions and in Pacifica.
Well, at that time, I think our first mayor is Jean Fassler, and she was a member of the PTA, and she was very active, and I was very active with our PTA in the Pacific Manor. So I knew Jean quite well, and when she got on the Board of Supervisors, she ran for that, and I worked on her campaign, and so she nominated me for the grand jury, so that was the first time I served in the grand jury. Then the second time, when Quentin Kopp became senator, he nominated me for the grand jury again, and I served a second term.
Yes, and I understand you were one of the first people to be nominated.
Oh, I have an eagle wall at home, believe it or not. It's a walk-in closet in my apartment at Casa Pacifica, and I have a whole wall full of trophies and things, but the ones that I value the most is, one of them is that I was elected to the Evenings of Stars, and then this is what I was president of the water district. I was on a water district for 21 years, and I was president one year. They gave me my gavel, and then I was nominated by one of the reporters for the San Mateo Times. She nominated me for the Women's Hall of Fame, so I was inducted into the Women's Hall of Fame. I think that was it was 2007. I think my award from, I have so many, I can't even keep track of them.
Yes. In fact, I'm afraid we have maybe lost some.
Oh,
Here is one. I think it's really
that's a picture of Maxine and I. Maxine was a former mayor of Pacifica. She and I used to go to all the political conventions. I was a delegate for Jimmy Carter when he was elected, and I was a delegate for Bill Clinton. So I think this was taken in Chicago when we were having the national convention when we re-elected Bill Clinton president the second time.
That's
and
good.
I always take my knitting with me. I'm a nitwit.
Good. That's important. Now, let's see. We have some, you were on many committees, and we have some pictures of you here with some very important people.
Yeah. Well, this one was taken with Lieutenant Governor Bustamante. And let's see.
And this one?
This one is Senator Quentin Kopp. He was giving me the award, to Sacramento, and that was for the Woman of the Year of the 8th Senatorial District. And that was taken.
This one?
I went to the inauguration of Governor Davis. This is Gray Davis. And we were taken.
And this one?
We used to go to, that's Willie Brown. He was governor, he was Speaker of the House at the time, I think. And he was a former mayor of San Francisco. He's a wonderful guy. He did a lot for San Francisco.
Yes. Now, I'm sorry, we're beginning to run out of time. Oh, I'm sorry, we're running out of time, and we'll have to end the show. And I will do that by saying, we want to thank you, May, for joining us today. And if you want to if anyone wants to get involved with the Pacifica Historical Society and our many projects, our address is Box 752, Pacifica 94044. www.pacificahistory.org, and thank you for watching the show. And I'll say lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing, leave behind us footprints in the sands of time.